to give a little introduction to Edgar Wortmann. We're missing Holbert is not in the audience, but I think he'll join us, and a few others will be joining us. But we can. I'll give a little background. I got to first meet Edgar Wortmann at, I believe, the 2013 AMI conference in Chicago. I remember this young man coming with all sorts of energy and thinking and with a very active mind and wanting to do something, you know, that this was going to be important. So, you know, Zarlenga would talk about little miracles or miracles. And I think Edgar Wortmann, Ben Dyson, and a number of people for Zarlenga's thinking would be miracles. And Edgar did not come to monetary reform as an academic, but as a legal professional and working about sustainability, about local districts or people trying to set up windmills or solar panel groups and trying to do that in a civic oriented way, a local civic thing. But for them to be able to do it, they had to not become a bank themselves, and in how they're going to fund it, they might accidentally legally start making themselves look more like a bank, and Edgar would have to give guidance. And from that guidance early on, say around 20 years ago or so, Edgar has developed some great thinking and understanding, and a deep understanding, which has helped him and helped us and helped me understand money legally in an important way. And so he's been a huge asset to monetary thinking, monetary reform, and to humanity. And Mother Earth would very much approves of Edgar's work. So, but all of that comes to CBDCs and electronic money. Ons Geld believes that electronic money has to be part of the future. It acknowledges that people are liking cash, and but we're heading towards a digital world, and this can be a means to bringing around justice and money. And this audience has gone through a lot in looking at the US situation, particularly around the Federal Reserve, but also we now are learning about Europe and a deep think on CBDCs there, and about CBDCs and money in general. And I don't have more to say. I just want to acknowledge Edgar's presence, his background, and I thank him for being here. And I turn the floor over to you, Edgar. Thank you very much.
Well, Liz, thank you, Stephen, for your kind words. I also remember that you drove me with the Prius to the barbecue in 2013 in Chicago. So that was our first chat, I think.
Okay.
But thank you.
I still have that Prius. It's still working.
I have a Prius too, an old one. Yeah. Well, I prepared a presentation, and I think that I just put that in front of you. That makes it easier for me to talk and know what I wanted to talk about. So this is my name. Can you see it?
Yes, we can, Edgar.
Okay. And now Govert is admitted too. I have authority here in the group. So, okay, so this is me, Edgar Wortmann, and my email address is also here. Even kijken hoor. How do we... Oh, yeah. So the title is How to Relate to CBDC. I have all your faces in my view, and I don't want to have that.
On the upper right, you should be able to minimize that.
Yeah. Yes, you're minimized now. So that's the title, how to relate to CBDC, or actually to the digital euro. I'm from Europe, so my perspective is Europe, the euro, and I'm very familiar with European financial law, and I'm totally not familiar with the American legal system. So you know, I know some general things about the dollar and the Federal Reserve, but not specifics. And I am familiar with specifics in financial law in Europe and the Netherlands, but the Netherlands has the euro, so this is a European thing. Well, when we had a citizen initiative in 2015 in the Netherlands, I became aware of the importance of digitization, because we have a problem with a money system, and that problem is there because money is created out of debt, and debt is risky. So the money is at risk. It's well, risky money, not solid money that we have when it's backed by debt and made out of debt. And then I became aware that digitization of money is the solution to that, because why do we have money creation out of debt? Because that makes it easy to do payment over distance without transporting real money, notes and coins. So there was an advantage in having a system as having an institutional order that is based, is created around having money created out of debt. And so the whole banking system emerged out of that, and that was to a certain extent a good thing, because it enables payment over distance, but it also has a lot of negative things. For instance, that by creating debt and keep on creating debt, society gets over indebted. And when we did our citizens initiative, it was already clear that the over indebtedness puts society in stagnation. And the only way out of that is inflation. But if you want to have the only way within the bank money system, but if you want to have a sound money system, you don't want to have inflation. So there was a problem with the current setup, and the way out is in digitization. So we thought, well, we have a problem with the money system, and the way out is digitization. And then we also had an initiative from the European Commission that was making plans for the monetary union, so for the euro. And they asked the European citizens, come up with ideas, tell us what you think, how we should go to the future with the euro. So we took that opportunity and said, thank you for the invitation. And what you should do is introduce a digital euro. And we made a letter, we made a report why they should do a digital euro. And in a sense, the idea behind digital euro is to replace bank money. Bank money is unsound money, it's unsafe, and we want to have sound money. So replace bank money with digital euro. That was basically our proposal. And then you would have to have a transition period for going from bank money to sound money, to safe money. And during that transition period, you should organize a soft landing of the bank money system. And you could do that by what we now call a modern jubilee. And we had a proposal for how to do that. And after some time, we also got a reply from the European Commission. They did not do anything with it in their ideas for the future of the euro, but they sent it to some compliance people in Luxembourg instead of Brussels, and they say, well, we understand your proposal, and we can assure you that we're not doing anything with it. So we're not working on a digital euro. We in our proposal, we said the key to this digital euro, the key to how to do it, how to get an advantage out of it, is that it should not be a liability of the issuing entity. So it should not be a claim to money. It should embody money. It should embody the euro. And for a digital thing to embody the euro, you don't need a bank, you don't need a contract, you need the lawmaker to create the statutes by which a digital code can embody the euro. And of course, you need an international, an institutional setup and IT for organizing that. So I want to remove this. Now, our assumptions were that the money system, the bank money system, is inherently unstable. I mentioned that already, but it's also, we think, usurious. And what we mean by that is that the central bank, by what it does, it enables private companies to commercially exploit the money system. So bankers think it's a good thing. Most economists think that it's a good thing, but we think that it is a bad thing, and that we should label it usury. Usury is not only asking for interest, but usury is generally exploiting the money system for commercial benefit, for your own benefit. And the usury is not only in interest, that those who create money earn money via interest, but it's also that they are the people who can allocate the new money. So in a way, they can distort competition, they can distort markets, they can make arrangements to be able to own everything that's of importance in the economy. So it's actually an oligarchic system. It's not a democratic system, it's an oligarchic system. It stems from times before we had democracy, and it's not geared towards free enterprise, it's geared towards monopoly. In a way, you could say that communism and capitalism are two sides of the same coin. They both gear towards monopoly, and our money system is geared to monopoly. And the central bank is the cornerstone of this whole thing. So, but the central bank a few years ago, a few years later, we came with our proposal for a digital euro in 2017 and 2020. The ECB said, well, we have thought about it. This was after Mark Zuckerberg came with the Libra, and they wanted to start a project for a digital euro. And first they say, well, we already provide safe money. So I think they read my paper and they thought, well, we have to get rid of this idea that we have to solve a problem with our money system. We don't have a problem with our money system. We already have safe money. That was the first sentence of this whole report. And the next sentence was, and of course, as you understand, the digital euro, that's a liability. That's a central bank liability of the euro system. So they already confronted our whole position, and they tried to go beyond the whole discussion that we wanted to have by these two preliminary statements. This preliminary statement is also endorsed now by the European Commission. It recently had its statement about the digital euro, and yes, the digital euro is a central bank liability. So that's beyond the debate. So everything we wanted to put on the table, that's beyond the debate. They don't want to talk about that, and they say it's a complementary of cash and of private payment means of payment. We never said it should complement cash. Or, well, we said in a way it should complement cash, but we made clear it should not be an alternative to cash, in the sense that cash could be put away with. The physical cash should be there because that's the most secure way. It's protection against cyber warfare. It's anonymous. So there's a lot of properties for physical cash, that one of the pillars for the whole monetary system should be that physical cash should remain and not should be abolished. Well, in the debate we had in the Netherlands, it became clear that the Dutch central bank, who was first with thinking about a digital euro because of our initiative, that they said, well, okay, we can do something with the digital euro to replace physical cash. So that's a thing that the ECB learned quickly, because there was unanimity in Dutch politics that should not be the case. So there was another element in the ECB report that said, well, it's not to replace cash. Yes, cash is disappearing, as a means of payment, but it's not to replace cash, but it's complementary to cash. But but in a way, as we see it, as we look at it, what's going on, it's the digital euro as envisioned by the European Union. It's a liability. It's competing with cash. It will be inevitably an alternative to cash because they want to get away with cash, do away with cash, because that gives more power, centralized power, and takes away an alternative we have for bank money. Our idea was to have a digital euro to replace bank money. Their idea is to have a digital euro to replace cash. If we say, well, central bank digital currency or the digital euro is a central bank liability, what are the consequences of that? Well, in the first place, it confirms the idea that money is dead. That's the dominant paradigm. Nowadays, there are even economists that claim that it's impossible to have debt-free money. So to have a silver coin, that's impossible according to them, or Bitcoin, that is also impossible. And some economists get very mad if you say that's debt-free. So the idea digital euro should be a central bank liability that confirms money is dead. In the past, we had the idea money is gold or gold is money. Now we have the idea money is dead. And our idea is money is information. And it should embody the general unit of value. And that should be a legal thing. When money is dead, then it means that it's a contractual thing, a private thing, a thing that private parties can create together. When the digital euro is a central bank liability, that means that the one who issues those liabilities is autonomous, is the sovereign regarding this money. So that preserves political autonomy to the ECB. So politicians, democracy, member states have nothing to say about this digital euro. That is one of the consequences about it. And it's made passive. It's pacified. That means that when money is a liability, this is how they also account for notes and coins as a liability. That way, the notes and coins are pacified, are made passive, so that they are no longer an instrument for monetary policy. They are pacified. So monetary policy is not conducted. That the money quantity is not created by issuing notes and coins or digital euro, but the monetary management is done indirectly. And essentially, monetary policy then is done by giving incentives to usurers who can create the money. So it makes the monetary authority passive, and it makes the primary thing, which is the euro, passive in a monetary sense. So that's the three outcomes of why of three consequences of having a digital euro as a liability that I mentioned here. Of course, we can mention a lot more, but these are the main ones in a sense, in a political sense. Why do we say that it should not be the central bank liability or liability at all? Well, that if you have it that way, then you put the basis for the digital euro, for this digital money, in the law. So the lawmaker has the authority, and not the banker, not contract, but statutory law. That's then the basis of the money. And then you make money in assets. So then you start with direct monetary policies, and that means that you directly control the money supply, not by giving incentives to usurers, people who profit from the money system, but just by providing money, if necessary, under conditions that fit to the system that you have, and that's a system that has to be defined by law. So then you can say, for instance, that if new money is issued, then this was our proposal. If the monetary authority thinks that new money should be added to the money quantity, it gives that money to the state. And then the state can decide what to do with it. For instance, give it away or spend it or lend it out, whatever. But it comes in at the balance sheet of the state as an asset. And the monetary authority should not have any self-interest in the money that it creates. It should be outside of the system. And it's completely opposite to what the central bank now does, because it dominates financial system and distorts markets. Well, we think it should be neutralized. So we think money should not be neutral, but the central bank should be neutral. And the central bank thinks money should be neutral, and we are very dominant. Now, this issue that we think, well, the main reason why it should not be, one of the most important reasons why it should not be a liability and have it to be governed by law. That's also picked up by the European Commission, because in their recent paper, they said, well, yes, of course, we cannot put this to the market, the digital euro, before we have a legal construct which goes through the European Parliament. And that's based on Article 133. And that says that, yes, there should be something that the Parliament thinks about it, but without prejudice to the powers of the European Central Bank, and in consultation with the European Central Bank. And this whole article is about implementation, is about how to force the digital euro as defined by the European Central Bank onto the public and to the member states. So this is not about for what purpose is it issued and to whom is it issued, under what conditions is it issued. That will be all not on the radar of politicians. That will be decided by the central bank in close cooperation with the commercial banks, so the usurers. And then when they made their plan, they say, well, there are a few things we need in the law so that everybody's obliged to use this new digital euro. And then that's the part where some form of democracy comes in, or legality comes in. But that's only in the way it's forced upon us, and not in the way that we have a democratic process in which we decide how we think that the money system and the digital euro should look like and how it should function in society. In 2017, we had a concept of a digital euro as a technological innovation. Then we had a process in the Netherlands in which that was debated, and then I learned that it should not be a technological innovation, that it actually can be created in conventional banking software, and we should not call it a digital euro as if it's a digital thing like a Bitcoin, but it can be just a banking account, a conventional banking account, which is a full reserve banking account and which is outside of the banking system. So it should be operated by the member state or by a public depository provided by a member state. So we transitioned from the idea of having what we call a virtual euro or digital euro to having personal safe accounts. And on personal safe accounts is safe money. And at first that could be seamless with the current banking system. For instance, it could be the case that your checking account with the bank is transferred seamlessly to a safe account, a personal safe account at a public depository. That could go seamlessly within your existing banking software without you noticing anything. But what would happen is that your money would be free of risk, and that deposit guarantee schemes and all those things could be abolished, because that amount of money that you think is money and not an investment in a bank, that's then safe. So, but what's important to see that actually, when we are talking about digital euro, we don't need to have the mindset that there should be some new innovative kind of technology. No, the digital euro is organizing the money system in another way by use of conventional banking software. Nothing new under the sun in a technological way, only something new in an organizational way, in a legal way. And that would consist of personal safe accounts, and then these are offered by the government or by a public depository outside the banking system. And on top of that, a platform is created on which payment service providers could offer those personal safe accounts as an IT solution. So that's what you have in your screen, to the public. And maybe they can offer forms of electronic money based on personal safe accounts. And then they cannot create the safe money on those accounts, but they can create something which enables you to interact with your money or your safe account, or your money which you checked out of your safe account and put in a digital wallet that they provide. So then you get that the digital euro, that's a conventional, very simple thing, nothing new in a technological sense, and innovation is created on top of that by market participants, and that's based on safe money, on safe accounts. When you do that, you can take away all the protection that banks have, because the protection is in the safe accounts. And taking away protection from banks is the same as exposing them to market discipline. So by having the safe accounts and putting a layer upon that, then you enhance competition. You enhance competition for payment service providers, you enhance competition for banking. So that would be something that's within the scope, the framework, the aims of the European Union, because that's about competition and free enterprise. At least they say it's about that. Then this enhanced competition is something between market participants, but there should also be competition between this currency, which is a public thing, which is on safe accounts, and quasi-monies, which are created on the market by market participants. And the good thing of having a competition between those two is that if the government screws up with this safe money system it provides, then we should have plenty of alternatives to go to as stores of value, as means of payment, as an alternative, because this competition that disciplines the government as well, the provider of safe money as well. Now, one of the motives why the ECB wants to have a digital euro seems to be that they are afraid of competition from the markets. And this was initiated by Zuckerberg, this is Libra, and then, well, that was a wake-up call, and now they want to have a digital euro, because otherwise Zuckerberg would take over the money system. But I don't think that in this way the ECB should compete with an oligarch as Zuckerberg. It should it should have another setup of the money system to get another kind of competition, a competition in which we can choose if we want to put our money on a safe account or at a Zuckerberg account or in a Zuckerberg wallet, and that we have an incentive to use government money because it's superior money, because it has no costs, no risks, and no inflation, a very important one, and no deflation also. And in the current setup, Zuckerberg would use all kinds of quasi-monies in his digital money scheme, which are backed by the central banks. And what central banks should do is not banking all those assets that Zuckerberg uses. So that would make the Libra, the Zuckerberg money, not that stable, as it would be more like an investment instead of money. It would not be one-on-one with the currency, but a kind of liquid a store of value backed with something that is subject to market valuation. And of course, the most important thing to counter someone as Zuckerberg is to have safe money and to have a platform on top of that, which can be used by all market participants to create competing digital payment solutions which compete with Zuckerberg. So then the public safe money system could leverage the network advantage of the general unit of value, the general money system, and make that available to all market participants. So then the advantage that Zuckerberg had, that we all have a Facebook app on our telephone, would disappear, because everybody has an advantage in that they create something which is based on the money that we normally use. So the idea that the ECB has is we have to compete with innovation and technology with Zuckerberg. I think that's a wrong idea. They should stop stop sustaining quasi monies, bank monies. So the disentangle money from the public money from the private monies, and make the public money better. So we want to choose public money, but still have available all kind of private monies as alternatives. Now, this is in accordance with what the ECB should do, because the ECB should act in accordance with the principle of an open market economy and free competition. And this was the reason when this was enacted. This was the reason in the Netherlands that the Netherlands central bank stopped offering accounts at the Netherlands central banks at the Netherlands central bank to the public. Before that, in the 90s, in the early 90s, we had the option to have an account at the Netherlands central bank, and that was they stopped with that at the moment that this was enacted. This idea that the ECB should not compete, but enable competition. Now, the key in what the central bank does in the current setup, that is having parity between the currency, the euro or the dollar, and quasi monies that are pegged to that are one-on-one related to that the currency. So in Europe you have the euro, and then commercial banks issue euro deposits, and then the whole central bank system is the idea of that is that a bank deposit in euro is always one-on-one with the euro. So there is not a free exchange rate, but a fixed exchange rate, which is enforced by the central bank and the whole institutional setup around that. And by doing that, the central bank enables private entities, banks, to create what we use as money, to create money. And by doing this, the central bank enables a few, those who are eligible to those services of the central bank, to create money and exploit the money system for their own benefit and the benefit of their big clients and owners. So having a fixed exchange rate between money, the currency, and quasi-monies, that's parity, one-on-one exchangeability. The central bank is the one solution, one institution that enforces that. And this whole thing is backed by the taxpayer. It has as a consequence that risk is socialized and that power is privatized in our system. Well, but I think what should happen is that the governments, not the banking system, the governments should provide safe money outside of the banking system, and that bank money should be demonetized. And with that, I mean that it should not have a one-on-one exchange rate enforced by the central bank, but a free exchange rate, or maybe a managed exchange rate on market terms, but not an exchange rate which is forced one-on-one, so that there is no market processes in valuing those assets. And if you demonetize bank money, if you stop parity, then you don't need the central bank. You can dissolve the central bank. So then you don't need central bank digital currency, you just need digital currency. And when you dissolve the central bank, you have all the assets of the central bank, which is a huge lot nowadays, they come available to deleverage our system. All those, that value on the balance sheet, on the asset side, the balance sheet of the central bank could then be used to pay off existing debts. And that was our deleverage without a crunch story, later quoted as a modern jubilee. The modern jubilee is then that debt repayment vouchers are handed out to the public, and then they can go to the bank and say, well, I pay a little, a part of my debt to the bank. And then the bank has that voucher, goes to the central bank and says, I want to repay a part of my debt to the central bank. And then the system is deleveraged. There is debts are repaid, and the debts are becoming less debt in the system. And the extent of this deleveraging, that is then determined by how much money the people thinks it wants to have in the system, how much money people are putting on safe accounts, and this could be managed in a certain way. And I have a paper about that also, but I'm not going to talk about it here. You can read about it in my new instruments for monetary management. I think it's on the IMMR website. But an advantage of the CBDC, the programmable CBDC, could be to have an application of that, could be to have to create those debt repayment vouchers. That's the one and only application I see for the technological development they are now trying to start, or now going to start, which is going towards programmable CBDC. And the only application I see is not as money, but as a way to get rid of bank money and to deleverage the system. So now, what's my conclusion? How to relate to CBDC? Well, I think, at least this is my stance in it, I stick to my principles and go on in confronting usury. And I'm not going to beg for presents derived from usury. And of course, the thing that can happen is that we get, in our movement, get all kinds of discussions and say, well, yes, well, maybe we cannot change the system as a whole, so let's compromise and then ask something to save the climate, save for whatever you think is a good course, or to have a whatever. But I don't think that's the good way. It's not the way I want to go. I just want to take my stance, confront usury, and the only good, the simple slogan you can have is, yes, we want to have digital cash, but not central bank digital cash, because we have to dismantle the central banking, because we want to make an end to usury. Now a quote from the Bible, because the whole situation that we're in was foreseen 2,000 years ago already. In Revelation, the record of that, there it says, "For you merchants were the great men of the earth. For your sorcery, all the nations of the earth were deceived." Well, that second line, that's our money system, and those merchants are the oligarchs that run the system and that have a central bank that puts them in power. And now now can we say, well, we will never be able to conquer this system. But in the Bible, we can read that it was foreseen that we would have the system. And in the Bible, it also said this system will fall. It will fall anyway. And the only thing you have to do as believer, if you believe in the Bible, then the advice you get is endure to the end. So my conclusion, the final conclusion in how to relate to CBDC is stick to your principles and endure till the end. And well, yeah, here's some information you can find. So any questions?
Thank you tremendously, Edgar. As moderator, I'd like to give the first question, but I want to just make a note for the audience. Instead of putting your question in the chat, if you can, please try to go under your lower bar under reactions. And under reactions, the lower part, it says raise hand. If you could raise your hand and then lower your hand after your question, that would help. Steve is reading the chat, and Steve Norris is reading the chat, and I'm working with him on that. And so the chat is for a lot of comments, but if you can raise your hand, that would, under reactions, that would be the preferred way to go. So first question, if I could ask just to, I think the presentation Edgar's made follows the NEED Act, the history of the NEED Act in the United States remarkably well. It reminded me of Alexander the Great visiting India. All of the Greek gods, there was an Indian god too in the for the yogis, and there are similarities. And I think what's going on in Europe in terms of having a positive CBDC for the people and safe money is very much how we're thinking too in the United States. There are some little differences. And one of the things that Hovard, and this is my question, Hovard, to you, is when we think of safe money and government being safe money, and then you also point out you can have competition, open market and free competition, so there can be choice. And if something fails, you can go to another one. And it might be something like the Zuck buck or the Zuckerberg buck or something like that. So when I think about seniorage, and just for this group, for the new people, you can think about seniorage. When new money comes into circulation, who gets to spend it first? And if we get Zuck bucks, is the seniorage going to the Libra or to the DM or whatever their money system is, how it's evolving now? You know, should there only be government money because seniorage should always belong to all of the people? Or can there be company currencies and that's okay too? That'll be the first question I have. I have others, but I can see people are raising their hands now. Any thoughts, Edgar?
Yeah, well, I think that the general unit of value, so the currency, should have a limited purpose. It should not be an endless store of value. It should only be a store of value up to a certain point to enable people to have adequate liquidity in the currency available, but not more than that. So the way to manage the safe money system it would be based, in my view, on taxation. And it starts with having a free amount that someone can hold on a safe account without taxation. And when it has more than that, it will be increasingly progressively taxed. So that's a kind of seigniorage already, because that taxation goes to the government. It's not interest for a bank, it's tax for the government. In this way, you can manage the amount of money that's kept on safe accounts, and that at a certain point, the surplus is invested in the economy, or maybe put into private forms of liquid stores of value, privately issued stores of value. That's not a bad thing, that's a good thing, because in the end, we don't want to have an all-powerful government. Now we want to have a government that enables honest competition, enables a market playing field, enables that people have sufficiency in everything, but everything beyond that should be free, a free enterprise. So not all seigniorage should go to the government, and money should have a limited purpose, but the revenue created from having that system should go to the government.
So, okay. It's interesting. I have some follow-up questions on that, but I'm going to hold off. We have a number of people. If Krill and then Franz, and Krill, if you could go first, and you're unmuted. Good.
Yes. Hi. Here is my name. I'm very very well aware of the actions of Ons Geld, and I very much appreciate what Ons Geld managed to perform in the last years in this legal movement in the parliament. Just one comment on the presentation and 3 questions. First comment is about the conference happened in Zurich 3 days ago about the CBDC. And there was a presenter, Leonardo Cambacota, from the Bank for International Settlements, who is head of innovation and digital economy. And he had a presentation about the overview of CBDC in the whole world. And if I may just very quickly share my screen, if it's allowed, just to show one conclusion from Leonardo Cambacota. Is it possible to share my screen very quickly?
That would be up to, yes, you've now.
You should be able to.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. So that's a presentation from Leonardo Cambacota from the Bank for International Settlements, the bank of all banks in the world. And on page 33, we see the sentence as a conclusion.
Wait. We don't have it. Can you may need to try sharing again.
This is the first page. Do you see that?
No, we
no.
don't.
Okay. Let me just try once again, share.
Now we do. Thank you, Chris.
Yes. So the topic was about CBDC. From Leonardo Cambacota from the Bank for International Settlements. And on page 33, we see the conclusion of his presentation that with the question, will the central bank take over private lending? And the answer is overall actual CBDC designs explicitly aim to preserve the private lending and 2-tier system. So in fact, no change is intended. And as you mentioned, Edgar, maybe the central banks, they just aim to create a competition to suck buck, just to not to be the last one who creates a digital money. So that's the only intention, but there is no intention to change something in the current system. I can share these slides with everybody. So this is the very fresh information from the whole world, so to say, about CBDC. So that's all about that. I'm giving back the control. Let me just find out how to do that.
Yeah, just stop sharing your screen and that'll be good.
Is that now? So stop sharing. Okay, great. And then the questions first is, I know about the idea of safe account. First question, is it meant to be legal tender? First question. Second question is, I know that the idea is to have, let's say, at the beginning up to 10,000 euros, for example, per person, and then increase every year, increasing by let's say by 10,000. What will be the reaction of the people on this decision to have only, let's say, 10,000 and not more, and not the whole savings? So what will be the reaction of the normal people? The question is, what about, so safe if they are legal tender, those safe accounts, what should happen with the non-personal money called euro on the accounts? Let's say the company's money called euro on account, or everybody's euros on account. What should happen with that money? Should that be legal tender, not legal tender, or what is the idea? That's everything from my side. Thanks.
Thank you. So we got two questions, one on legal tender and two on 10,000 euros per person and more each year. What would be the reaction of people on this? Edgar, do you want to take one or both now?
Yeah, well, in my view, this idea legal tender is not that important, because, for instance, bank money is not legal tender, but bank money is the dominant form of money. In the Netherlands, we only use, before the euro, we only use legal tender for specific coins. When there was a holiday or a Memorial Day coin issued, then we said, this is legal tender, you can use it for payment. So it was something that was only for special coins. And in Europe, there is no, not all the member states have the same idea of what it means to have legal tender. And the difference can be that you're obliged to take it, or that if you are not going to take it, you don't have the right to ask for something else. And so the idea what is legal tender is not clearly defined, and it's totally not a problem to the current system. And we all use a kind of money that's not legal tender. So this whole idea of legal tender is, to me, not that important. If we go to the idea that there should be competition between government money and private money, then I think that it would be good to do away with this whole concept of legal tender, because that would stand in the way of having that competition. So the idea is that government money should be sound and stable and free of costs and free of inflation. And we use it because that is superior money. That is actually money. That's why we use it, and not because we are obliged to do so. We can also think, well, there's something better, let's use that. And that happens when we get a Zimbabwe system or a Euro system, for instance, which can be outcompeted by Zuckerberg in the current state of things. So I don't think that the idea of legal tender is very important. And I also dare to play with the idea that we should abolish the whole concept.
Okay, and your thoughts, Edgar, on your reaction of what you think how the people will react to having 10,000 euros per person and
well, we had that in our public debate. Should there be a cap on safe money? And the parliamentarian that was promoting this idea said, yes, there should be a cap on it. And how did the people react? No, didn't react, because it's not interested in the whole subject. But I did react, and I said, well, I don't think that is a sustainable idea. Maybe in your political discourse, say there is a cap, but you cannot maintain a cap. You should have another system. It should be based on market principles. So I came up with this taxation idea. So you come up with the idea that a certain amount is free of charge, and beyond that, you should be taxed progressively. So the cap is in the pricing of safe money, and then monetary policy is about how much safe money should there be free of charge, and how much to charge progressively for the surplus. And that has to do with how stable do we want to have society, how much liquidity buffer should everybody have, and at what point we want everybody to invest in the economy and not store it inactively on your safe account. So that is the main question. It's not about how do the people react, but this is monetary policy. Where, what is the amount that makes money safe and makes our society safe and prosperous, and what is the from what point on we want to incentivize the people to take risk and invest in society.
Let me follow up on that in comparison to the US. In the US, a bank makes a loan to a customer, and that customer gets bank credit deposited into their account. And then that money, or that account money, that credit in the account, is used to pay somebody, say the seller of a house, for example. And at that point or before, that money has become a purchasable medium. And in that sense, I look at it as legal tender, or the equivalent of legal tender, Edgar. Any comments there?
Yeah, well, I know that the situation in the Netherlands, so bank money is not legal tender, but if you have a bank account and you mention that bank account or you make it available, then you have to accept payment on that account. So there's something in between here. And well, this is something that I don't think should not be decided top down, but could be something which is decided in the course of things. That's the attitude of the Dutch legal status quo before the euro, because with the euro, there's a push to have legal tender and to make it an obligation to accept. That's a push. And I'm not on that page. I don't like that.
Okay, thank you. It's insightful, and it helps us to think too about the possibilities here too. We're learning from each other. Franz, you've got your hand up, then Lucille, and then Miguel Fernandez. Franz, please go ahead. You have to unmute, Franz.
Edgar, first of all, thank you for this really good presentation in terms of contents and also of delivery. And basically, it's a question whether you consider money debt or real money. And so that is the big challenge, and I think all of us who are here are in agreement with that. So thank you for making that very clear, what the Dutch government and also what the EU is doing. And I may say I'm kind of proud to be Dutch born, given that this is coming out of the Netherlands. That's point one. Point two, I recently read the book by Ray Dalio about the principles for a changing world. And it's very interesting how he shows how the Dutch Empire in the 17th century, the so-called golden or the Gouden Age, that the monetary system of the Dutch Empire in the 17th century was the first one to have a bank, a central bank, to have a stock market, to have a reserve currency. And then he shows how it disappeared, how it declined, how then the Britain came to be the empire, and now the US is the empire. And now everybody is asking, what is the next empire? And so what I have been doing as a sustainability sociologist of international development, I have looked at the international dimension of the whole monetary system. And so I published a book at the same time that you were thinking about in 2013 a book which proposed to have the international monetary system based upon a decarbonization standard. Concretely speaking, and on a specific tonnage of CO2e per person. So, given that the Dutch in the 17th century were so outstanding in terms of the monetary things, and of course there are also things that were not so praiseworthy. I've been working on a proposal which I call BINRA. And BINRA stands for Binnenhof and the Raadzaal, basically the center of the Dutch government. And I would like the Dutch government to take the leadership as they did in monetary affairs internationally, together with the ECB, with the European Central Bank. And so what you have been presenting today is really the beginning of that basic monetary challenge of the Dutch government and the European Central Bank. And when I learned that you were coming, I sent some information about this to Ons Geld. And so I was wondering whether, first of all, whether you have seen that information. And second of all, what do you think how a proposal like BINRA, which is basically the monetary challenge of the Dutch government and the European Central Bank, how that can lead to an international system, monetary system, that has a decarbonization standard, monetary standard, which has a UN People's Bank, which is very similar to what a lawyer here, Omarova, has been writing about a US ledger, People's Ledger. And so based upon that, I developed the idea of a UN People's Bank. And so I developed a whole international system, and many of my friends and colleagues who are here, they know how I have been emphasizing the need for nations to go beyond monetary tribalism. Everybody is looking in their own little thing, and they're making proposals, and it all becomes a mess, because in the last instance, people have to start first in a global system for a global problem. Then, like we are in now with the inflation discussions and all of that, for a real global problem, first a global framework has to be developed, and then nations can start doing their own thing and see how they can have a particular position. So my question to you is, first of all, whether you got that information I sent to Ons Geld, and second of all, whether the proposal like this BINRA and this international framework, I call it the Tierra Transformed International Monetary System Framework, how that might be a possibility as a next step for Ons Geld in pursuing not only the Ons Geld and the European and the EU challenge, but as a challenge to be a forerunner and pusher of a Tierra's monetary system as I was describing a minute ago.
Thank you, Franz. Thank you, Franz. So let's look at that. One is the first question, Franz's question was easy. Did you happen to see anything come across Ons Geld in terms of this information that Franz has, Edgar?
I'm not familiar with it. I'm sorry.
Okay.
No, also Edgar, I
second-
didn't have your email, and so I sent it to info@Ons Geld. So that is question one. Okay, Steve.
Okay, and the second deals with the development, maybe through Ons Geld or through the Dutch or through the Dutch People's Ledger, if you will, but towards an international money. And I would like to put it into two questions then. What do you think, Edgar, about any kind of international money, one, and two, might we have a carbon-free international money and maybe the ECB with the Dutch could lead it?
Very good, Stephen.
Yeah, well, the euro is international money then in a way, and that puts an end to national sovereignty. So I think you can have international quasi monies, but if you have a currency which you manage and it's the currency, then you lose sovereignty. So you want to have sovereignty, you want to have your own currency. That's how I look at it. And then apart from that, you can have all kinds of liquid stores of value or ways to make payments, but that's not money then, as I see it, and that should be subject to market principles and not embody the currency.
In regards to the carbon-free international currency, would you be willing then to even entertain that given your sovereignty thinking?
Well, there's another problem with that, because to sustain an increasing population on the earth, I think we should increase carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And it's a gift of God that's very steadily increasing. And it has nothing to do with combustion engines, but it has to do with the ocean that's emitting CO2 when it's getting increasingly warm, and it has warmed for 1 degree over the past 150 years. So it's good to have more CO2. I would only get nervous if we go beyond 1000 ppm, because from 1400 ppm people get a bit sleepy, but before that it's just good. Plants grow by CO2. It's plant food. So it's an invention of the oligarchs. I come from the sustainability movement, and at a certain point, and sustainability, that's about being against pollution, depletion, waste. And then at a certain point, oligarchs entered the stage and are brainwashing everybody that it should be about CO2 and the climate. But it's just brainwashing by oligarchs. So actually, I don't want to have anything to do with action that's targeted at decreasing CO2 in the atmosphere. Then my reply is we should increase it.
I'd like to follow up with the temperature idea. Maybe it is that little bit of warmth, but you're suggesting we've got some leeway there. Okay, Franz, you're going to have to redevelop your thoughts there to approach Edgar.
It will surely be included.
Okay.
But
Okay.
Edgar, also in terms of your book of the I'm getting a little bit.
Wait, Franz, let's go on. Let's go on because because we got a line of people now. Lucille is next. Thank you.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you very, very much, Edgar. Really nice to see you in this setting. And I would echo Franz's comment to commend you for the contents and delivery, and that it's not your mother tongue is only so much more impressive. I believe English isn't but it was stellar in that regard. My question takes us back to, I think, the question Curl asked, because your presentation made total sense to me, and I really appreciated it. And yet so your response around legal tender, and I agree with what you said, that our bank money today is not de jure legal tender. I would add the word de jure, but de facto it is. We're using it as money. It's what our government wants us to pay our taxes in. You know, it's all account-based now, or check-based before. So my question though is, your answer, I think, if I understood it, was that you don't like the concept of legal tender at all. And it seems like is what then you're doing replacing the term legal tender with the term safe money? It seems like that is, if safe money is publicly created by the government, if that's an accurate definition of safe money, is that really not what legal tender is? And being that you're a lawyer, it's confusing to me a little bit that you wouldn't use the same term there. So could you just unpack that all a little bit more?
I think we're talking about two different things. When I'm talking about safe money, then I mean money which is not at risk, which is not backed by debt, which is not debt in itself, but which embodies the general unit of value. So when I say general unit of value, then that assumes this is already the thing that people use to pay.
Right.
So as something that already happened. So in that sense, you should say, well, if people are used to pay with bank money, then that's the general unit of value. One could say, but when so that safe money, that's then the general unit of value. What I mean with that it's safe, that it's not at risk. There's no inflation, no deflation. There's no costs to it. There's no it's not made programmable in a way so that you're unable to use it in ways that the government doesn't like you to use it. So if the government provides that has a function in itself, then that is money in our perception, and we will use it as money. And then I don't think there is a need to have an obligation that you should accept it. That's the European push that's there. When you look at the concept of legal tender in a more subtle way, that's the way that the Germans and the Dutch have. The Germans call it then not that you are obliged to accept it, but there's an Obliegenheit to accept it. And that means that if you're not obliged to accept it, but if you don't, you can't ask for something else. That's a more subtle way. And in that subtle sense, I like the concept, but I don't like the push to have something top down, which makes the Obliegenheit to an obligation.
I understand that. And that makes sense. And your description of safe money makes sense. But is it publicly created? And is it a matter of law that it exists as money? As asset, as
when we start with safe money, then we start with full reserve accounts.
Right.
And then it's still a debt, but fully reserved by central bank money. And then in this transition process, at a certain point, then the lawmaker comes in and says, well, this idea that it is full reserve, that's backed with central bank money, that doesn't serve a purpose anymore. It serves a purpose in the beginning for the transition and to have it seamlessly in all respects. But when it is accepted as the general form of money, then there's no need to have it attached to the central bank and its assets. So that's the moment that we say we demonetize bank money, we unlink safe money from debt from the central bank, and the assets of the central bank come available for our modern jubilee. So that's my vision on what should happen as a transition.
Excellent question, Lucille. Wonderful answer, Edgar. Miguel Fernandez Ordonez, welcome, and your turn.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you for the invitation. And well, I am very happy to see Edgar Wortmann. We met in Madrid in a meeting of the MI, and I read all his papers, and I learned a lot. I wrote a book, and in the acknowledgements, I recognize how much I have learned. Then I am very happy to see. But I would like to touch, Edgar, in one point, that is this relatively complex idea of the taxation, the limitation of the safe money use. Because I think I am in your first slide, and I think your first slide is the central idea of the reform. First, introducing safe money. Second, replace bank money. And third, a transition you call soft landing. Then, in my view, the problem is that, or the advantage or very good thing now is that we have safe money. The digital dollar is not comparable with bank money. I mean, you are not going to have banking crisis. You don't need to give lender last support. You don't need warranty deposit and so on. Then we have that. The problem in my view now is that the banks associations has created this idea and transmitted to some central banks that you should limit the use of good money, of safe money. Why? To maintain the deposits. Then the problem is that we are not replacing the bank money. We are harming the use of bank money, and I think this is absurd, because what we need is to have all money should be safe. Of course, it's different, the competition in providing payment services, in credit and so on, that will be provided by private and initiative. And if we look this from the point of view of the transition, how to go from a system that has a lot of problems, I am not going to explain, because everybody here know all the problems, lack of safety, lack of competition, and so on and so on and so on. Then as element of transition is absurd. I think that we are helping banks difficulty in the use of safe money. No, we should help banks to use safe money and transform the banks and create enterprises to provide payments services, to provide credit, and so on and so on and so on. But it is absurd. It's like in the 19th century, well, the world did the reform. We had the banknotes of private banks, and was decided that all the money will be safe. And we had not any problem with the physical money, no crisis, no problem. But do you imagine that we are going to put problems in the use of banknotes that have been created by the central banks? I cannot understand, because I see that if the money is safe, it has no risks. You should not put remuneration negative or non-negative. The money do not have risk. Then we should accept the safe money without introduce complex questions like uses and so on, and that you are proposing, Edgar.
Yeah. But then there is no limit to the amount of safe money that people can hold.
Yes, yes, because if you replace the bank money with safe money, the problem to have a good monetary policy is the problem of the state through this central bank's independence and so on and so on. And they should decide the amount of safe money that are not going to create inflation, are not going to create deflation. And it's a more easy monetary policy because it's not, as you say, indirect. It will be direct. They will decide the amount of money and they will provide that money to the people.
How will they decide that? How will they decide it? It's kept. It's just a fixed amount.
Well, they will decide just the amount of money that you need to accompany the growth and so on. Because I think personally that the idea of not having monetary policy, that the Bitcoin is just and not, I think, absurd. I think it's good to increase continuously the money, not having inflation, but not having deflation. And that is, but then once you have decided that, the use of that money will be decided for the citizens, in our case of Europe. In their account, in their safe account, they will see 500 euros, multiply is 2,000 euros, and they will decide if they buy, they lend, they invest in capital, because one of the problems that we have in this system is that the decision of the banks, with all the regulation they have, they cannot invest, and we need investment. And then if you allow the people to decide, then you have not, now the banks decide to whom to lend, they lend, they cannot buy, they cannot provide them. But we should not introduce limitation. The limitation will be decided, the amount of money we need to not having inflation, not having deflation. But I would say, please don't touch the safe money. It's okay. You could allow all the amounts, and if there are some people that want to have a certain amount or do these transactions, and other important things is that the cross-country transactions. I mean, if one Spanish entrepreneurs went to buy a Korean or whatever machine, 1 million euros, you only allow to use 10,000 or 3,000 euros, save euros, and then the rest you should have to do with the banks. The problem is that, I think that the problem is that the central banks are afraid of the idea of transforming the banks. And they want to stop that, but from the point of view of the system, it's absurd to have safe money and unsafe money, because you continue to have the problems of the bad system we have. Then another thing is that the transition is important, and I think that we should help banks, but not to maintain doing what they do now, but to do the new things, to compete with other competitors in payments, in credits, and so on. And because now they compete with the help of the state, lender of last resort, guarantee of deposit. No. We are going to suppress, like in any introduction of competition, in trade, in whatever, in telecommunication, in transportation, we are going to suppress and remove all the support of the state. All competitors should play in the same level playing field without any protection of the state. That is a very big change, obviously. We need a transition, but the transition should be to help them to transform, not to help them to maintain and to continue to do what the banks do it now. That is my idea, and that's why I don't agree the limitation and so on, and I think I don't agree your taxation position, no? With the safe bank, with the safe money, because I think that the safe money should not have any limitation, because we are going to give that to the people, and the people will decide. The people as individuals, or the people, if you decide half of the amount created go to the individual accounts and half to the parliament to decide, no debt, well, that should be decided. But the people through their representatives or individually will decide what are going to do with the saved money. That is why to explain why I don't agree with the idea of explore this, because that exploration means that we admit that the system will be the same just with a little introduction of saved money. No, we need that all money, like in the 19th century, that all banknotes are central banknotes. We cannot allow any private notes, and now we cannot allow private money. Of course, we need private service providers, competition, or credit, competition, a lot of free. Because one of the problems why we don't have now competition is because the states, to avoid the problems of unsafe money and risky money, have been during 1.5 centuries a lot of protection, a lot of privileges that avoid competition. How are going now to provide credit if the banks have guaranteed deposit lender or I'm surprised that there are anybody that could provide credit that is not bank, because then the idea is separate money that should be monopolized by the state, safe payments and credit that should be provided completely with competition. That is what my idea. Once I learned a lot from you of the importance of safe money and so on and so on.
Thank you, Miguel. That was a clear, strong statement. I have a way to transpose it, but Edgar needs to respond first.
Yes, I don't know how to respond. I think we agree there should not be a cap on safe money. I think there should be a system of pricing on it to have control on it, because that would be the instrument for monetary policy. I don't think how you could have a sound system without a check on how much money is there in the system and how it is allocated in the system. For instance, if you don't have a check on it, it could amass all the whole safe money quantity could amass on the account of one oligarch, and that would be the one who sets the monetary policy, not because he is legally entitled to it, but because he has the money. So I cannot see how that new system should be without something to manage it. And this taxation idea is the way I think this could be managed. But it was not the subject of this talk. So maybe we should have another talk specifically about this.
Yes.
Yeah, let me just.
I think so, that we could interchange our ideas, but not now.
Let's flip it, Edgar. In your thinking, Edgar, how do you look at the role of banks in the future? How would they conduct their business in the future? Maybe
You're asking me, Stephen?
I'm going to ask Edgar to keep on topic, but just in his dreaming or his thinking of the future, how would banks work? You know, in the book End the Banking, they have a very strong idea. There's a number of different ideas out there. And I'm just wondering, because this is new, interesting for me too. And I'm just wondering how to think about the US too. But any thoughts on the future of banks, Edgar?
Well, the most important thing, the difference with the current system is that the way they finance themselves would be fully market oriented. Now they can finance themselves with something we call deposits. And deposits are exempt from all the rules that apply for shares and for securities. So they should finance themselves in a market-oriented way. And now the whole institution of a central bank, the whole institutional setup, is designed so that people give their money, their funding to banks blindly, without asking what the bank does or what risk exposure is implied in this, because there is no risk exposure, because there is this parity set up. So remove that, and then the funding of banks becomes more market oriented, and the remuneration of deposits become market oriented. There will not be one remuneration set by a central bank. No, this would differ all the banks in the markets, and that would be not dominated by interest rates set by a central bank, but it would be dominated by the risk that is implied in this investment in this bank. So that's market principles.
Very good, Edgar. So if I'm a customer and I go into your bank, you would ask me, what kind of risk do I want to be exposed to? If I want high risk, you can invest in other people's credit cards. Medium risk, you can invest in mortgages. Low risk, maybe a commercial paper or a company bond that's preferred and maybe is attached to low risk. Would that be fair for a bank to be doing in the future in terms of making sure the depositor knew what type of risk they wanted, or they put their money into a no interest safe account maybe?
Yeah, so that's no interest. And if you have a lot of that money, in my view, comes with a certain cost progressively. So then you have an incentive to look around and say, where will I put my money in? And then you can choose for a place where it is invested high risk, or a place where it's invested low risk, where you can store it in gold or whatever you think is low risk.
Is that why Holbert bought all that gold?
There's one rule, one new rule, I think, that should be in financial law. Currently, you're not allowed to lend from the public and provide credit. That's the definition of a bank. So you're not allowed to do that. And I think that should not be something that should be prohibited. But what should be prohibited is that you fund your business with money that can be demanded. So to fund your business with demand deposits, that should be outlawed. So if you have a business and you want it to be funded by money from the public, attracted from the public, you cannot say, well, you can remove your money at any moment. No, you should say, if you want to remove your money, that can only happen on the conditions that we have in our agreement. And if I don't have it, I cannot give it to you. So it would be more equity based. There would be you get to a situation where you have managed exchange rates that, for instance, you can get your money back one-on-one if the bank has it, but if the bank does not have it, the rate goes down. And I devised a system to get local credit system, cooperative credit systems based on such a kind of equity money. And there within the system, then credit comes available up to demand, and that's demand is then controlled by the provider of services in that system, because that's the one who has to carry the burden of credit. So this is an interest-free credit system. It's funded on equity, not on debt. And the credit decisions are ultimately taken by the one who provides services and is paid on credits, because he has to take the discount on it, a one-off discount. So not an interest that accrues in time, but one-off interest at the moment that the service provider accepts the deal with a discharge. And there are devised a kind of bank system which has its own currency, its own internal currency, which is normally one-on-one with the general unit of value, the general currency. But when the assets of this entity don't support that, don't back that anymore, then it gets lower. So you can get your money out of this cooperative. It is maximum one-on-one with the euro, or less if it goes bad in the system. And that would provide a credit system with the right incentives, because credit then is not created because the system earns from it, but it's created because this helps to make a deal, to help to use the resources available in the network, and it does not put the burden on the one who needs the money. The one who needs the money gets the credit and only has to pay the sum of credit that he gets. The burden is on the one who has additional turnover. So here there is a new kind of banking concept, which is equity-based and which doesn't have the incentives of the current bank credit creation system, and which does not have the backing of a central bank. Because that's the general idea. The central bank should be abolished.
Okay, it's theoretically, and practically, it can be a very interesting and powerful idea. Thank you, Edgar. Joe
It's something that
Polito.
we are implementing here.
Okay.
We're actually
in
going to do
ways
it.
too. Yeah, I see some parallels in the US too, but let's get on to Joe Polito. I'm mute, Joe.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I would echo Lucille's comments, and it was certainly very thought-provoking and creative, almost uniquely creative. And you seem capable of juggling many, many balls at once, all the variables that you're dealing with. I have two things I wanted to talk about, and Miguel already covered one concern. He expressed all my concerns about money and many private issuers, et cetera, et cetera. Thanks for that, Miguel. So I'll stick with the one, and that is your connection with what we want in the NEED Act. The part of your vision deals with the private sector, but we're concerned about the public sector primarily. That is, we would like to see government having access to money, which sounds like your system would provide as much as they need. They would be issuing it one way or the other. And we're concerned about meeting all the essential needs of the people: education, health, infrastructure, sustainability, et cetera. Reducing inequality and giving everybody an opportunity to flourish in life. So can you talk about that side a little? I assume you're familiar with our NEED Act, the just money concept. Can you tell us how your system relates to that? Thanks so much.
Yeah, well, the thinking is primarily based on the current situation and going from the current situation to the desired situation. And in that transition, it's not yet there that we say, well, there's not enough money because there's plenty of it. So there's not enough money, so someone has to issue additional money. That's not the situation when we start the thinking from the current situation to do a transition to the desired situation. But if we are in the desired situation, then the monetary management, monetary policy is oriented at the liquidity buffers that should be available throughout society, well spread throughout society, and they have to be at a level that we say, well, that's okay. This is everybody can have everything it needs, and it's a stable system. If something bad happens, we have enough liquidity to cope with that. So then that money is in the system, and if someone needs investment, it should primarily come out of that system. So it should come from the choices of the people that have enough money to put their dollar, their euro where their mouth is. That should be the basic idea. Now, when there's not enough liquidity buffers, then there needs to be additional money. And then the monetary authority, in my view, would give it to the government. And the government is completely free in deciding how to use it. It can give it away, it can lend it out, it can invest it, spend it, or a mix of that. So then that's something for the common good. That's something for the government that represents the common good.
And so out of that good would become government welfare too. education, healthcare, and things like that, Edgar.
Yeah, but the idea is the government has a limited purpose, must make sure that there is not enough liquidity buffers well spread throughout society, so everybody has enough. And from that idea, then we say now society is free, make it truly democratic, because people can choose what they want to put their money in, and it's easier to attract money for things that are needed. And then I have my debate with Miguel, then should there be an incentive for people to put their money somewhere or not? Well, I think that should be there. They should have enough and then have an incentive to use their surplus. And then you get truly democratic society, which is not based on politicians, but on a system in which individual choices steer the system bottom up. That's my idealistic idea, but that's after the delusion that we first have to face. That's for the 1,000 years of peace that is promised in Revelation 2.
Thank you, Edgar.
Thank you very much.
And young Kim, thank you for being here, and it's your turn.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Edgar. I totally agree with your basic principle and your final end goal vision. I like the idea of just money and safe money and public money. And competition. But we should not allow competition in making money, creating money, and recognizing money. What is money? There should be no competition. The unified, the socially agreed conception about what is money, what is commodity. Is money is same meaning as cash? Yeah. We say just money and fair money, public money. You mean what is cash? Digital cash. We mean central bank digital cash. CBDC is also cash. Yeah. We should set up the whole totally agreed concept about what is money and what is a financial instrument bought with money. So before we get into the creating a new system or new money, we should have some agreement about recognizing money. What is money? And if that is some money, to whom it belongs? Your bank account, demand a checking account, your balance on your account in bank. Who is the owner of that money? Is it you or the bank? Bank deposit, there is some legal issues in British that any money which you at the moment you hand it over to the bank teller, it's not your money. Whatever is deposit on demand checking account or a term deposit, that money, that cash belongs to bank. You have only the claim on your account. That's the legal interpretation of the England legal system, as long as I understand. But we need to change. We need to bring some change to this. If I put my money into bank account, the checking account. That money should belong to me, not to bank. The bank they should not allow to lend out my money to others without my agreement. So we need to discuss about before we get into the creating new type of money. We have to come to agreement with what is money, yeah, and what is cash. That's more important, the first step, I guess. And the secondary, the goal of our system, desired system, is that we come to a current situation is digital cash and physical cash is interchangeable for as long as for the street people, yeah, normal people. As long as for me, it doesn't matter if I have my money as a $100 bill or my banking account, a checking account. It doesn't matter. I don't agree. Anytime I can withdraw money, my money. It's same money, same my money. Every people, every normal people, I think every people agree my thinking. But the legal system or the politicians or some bankers, they don't agree, you know. It's only up to some. The insurance, deposit insurance allows, yeah. There is some limit. But my idea is if you, as I said before, there should be no competition about creating money. Money creation should belong to the whole society, not the government, not the bank, not like Hitler, Zimbabwean president, but the whole society, democratic society. The whole society has the authority about money creation. And also we should have some socially agreed concept about what is money and what is financial instrument, bought with my money. That should be. And then the second step is how much is the current total amount of money in each monetary unit. US dollar, as of last night, this is the total amount of US cash. Physical US dollar is this much, and digital US dollar is this much. We should know that, yeah. We should come to that transparency.
Let me ask,
Okay.
Is there a question? Is there any response, Edgar, right now? What are you thinking? And should there be a clearer question for you?
Okay, yeah.
Well, I think the issue is important to have a clear definition of money. If you want to build a system, you need to have that. And now we have very complex financial law. And that is so complex because it doesn't want to define money. And it does want to obscure the whole discussion about what is money, who is allowed to create it, and on what conditions, and how who does benefit from that. It obscures that. So to have a sound system that starts with a good definition of money, and the definition that I use, that it is the embodiment of the general unit of value. And if you want to have a digital form of that money, and already if you want to have that top-down stipulated to society, that something from now on is the embodiment of a general unit of value, then you're talking about coining money, that the sovereign has the right in the law to say that a kind of piece of leather or a piece of metal, now because there is a certain print on it, is now coined money. So then you see it's a legal activity there. When you have digital money, it becomes more difficult, and the legal aspect increases, because it's impossible to have a digital asset which is not a claim on anything, unless the lawmaker decides that it exists. That's the same with intellectual property. Intellectual property doesn't exist unless that it is statutorily defined what it is, and concluded in the legal system that it is there, and that it can be, that the whole system will ensure that it is there. So you can make claims on it, and you can you can compel others to act in according with your intellectual property. So getting a digital money which is not a liability, that needs a statutory basis, and then you will inescapably get a discussion. Okay, so what is it? And then who can create it, on what conditions, who benefits from it? And these are the questions that should be asked. And that's the reason, one of the reasons why the idea of central bank money as a central bank liability, that is a way of keeping that discussion away from the politics and saying it should not be a liability. That is a way of putting it right into the political arena.
Thank you, Young Kim, for your question. We only have a few moments left, and Lucille has a last question here, and it is, Edgar, in your view, is there any difference between what you are proposing and the NEED Act? And you know the NEED Act, Edgar, in the US in general. If there are differences,
yeah, well, in general,
so what are the differences?
The NEED Act was written to have a pragmatic way of introducing public money in the US, and that looked at the way it's the legal setup of the US, and I don't have the knowledge of exactly how it is there, how it fits in that system. So I did not start with the NEED Act in my thinking, and I did not follow lines of the NEED Act. What I did is starting within the legal framework that I know here over here, and how it actually works over here. So I did not make the cross references for where the differences are. Mm-hmm. So maybe that's all I can say. I hope I'm not disappointing you.
Well, that was this, okay. And one of the things, Hobart is your fellow countryman, who's now in India, by the way, he's not in the United States anymore. He's taking you and looking at it as like, as much as possible, you like the idea of local people investing in local infrastructure like health and education, not representative politicians deciding how much money gets allocated top down. Is that a fair statement?
I'm sorry, maybe it's getting too late for me. I didn't
Okay,
really pick up the question.
I'll give it again. Does this sound fair or correct? Rather, you would like to see local people in the driver's seat for their local infrastructure, and including their health and their education. It should be more locally supported. and not so much by representatives from central government deciding on those issues top down. And so therefore the money should be out there more diffusely.
Yeah, I
Okay.
agree.
Okay. Yeah, it's just to get a perspective on your thinking, but also in thinking about central bank digital currency, digital money, and how we might think of Europe. And in this sense, what I'm looking at is, in your view, maybe Europe shouldn't be such a powerful entity as an overall structure, but that there should be a lot of little communities helping to decide. Would that be a fair statement?
Well, I think to have a government, to have central government that serves a purpose, it's necessary to have it, but it should be curtailed. It should be have a limited purpose. And now it's very greedy. It wants to be totalitarian, dystopian. And then as a reaction, people start moving away from the system and creating their own local structures. But it's not a healthy situation that we're in, because the central power is too greedy, and it should be curtailed. It should be limited. It should be defined what its function is, and its function is not to interfere with individual life in every detail, to the smallest details. It should make sure that there can be freedom, that there is free enterprise, that there is a level playing field, that it's fair. And currently there is no free, no level playing field, because certain parties have unlimited access to money and others don't. So some are always able to win the competition to the detriment of others. So it is unfair, that the idea that we now have a free market and fair competition that does not relate to reality, because the way our money system is organized. So we should have a money system in which we could have a fair marketplace, fair competition, equal chances.
Okay. And to conclude, I want to read Lucille's statement to everybody. And she says, I really appreciate Edgar's conclusion that in this time of discussion about CBDC, money reformers should, one, stick to our principle of confronting usury, and two, not beg for presents derived from usury. And maybe on that strong, good note, it's been most interesting and delightful and playful in our thinking about all of this. And I thank you, Edgar Wortmann, very, very much.
Well, thank you all as well. It was a pleasure.